We have a second team to get to know. I started to know them under the name STEALTH.unlimited. And it's Marc and Ana. I'm very happy you made it. It's always interesting. We had lots of conversations about distances and possibility to travel and or not, and places to reside and context. So I'm very much looking forward to your talk about the future.
Well, thanks all for being here. It's a little bit chilly. I hope you're surviving. Well, you asked us to talk a little bit about our practice, to speak about things we are doing when we are not here in Düsseldorf. And we wanted to use these 20 minutes to talk a bit about what has been going on in the last 8 years. 8 years ago was the last time we were here in Düsseldorf, so that's maybe a good occasion. As you'll see, we'll be going over a few strands of our work since, which is the energy cooperative, the bank and the money aspects, but also the work on housing we've been engaged with in the last 8 years. And last but not least, we recently started to focus a bit more on our artist trajectories again. For those who followed us a bit, that has been somewhat lost aspect in our work, but we'll talk about that more in the end.
Let's start with the energy cooperative Elektropioneer, and maybe you have heard already that we are about to operationalize our large-scale solar farm close to the Belgrade airport, and that's going to be a bit of a game changer for the cooperative, but let's go back to 2021 to see how this developed.
So 8 years ago, Elektropioneer kicked off in Belgrade. We were really a young cooperative, trying to understand what citizens' energy, Bürgerenergie, could work, how it could work in our part of the world.
We wanted clean, green energy made by citizens, and we had big dreams. Maybe you would call them naive today. Maybe we were just lucky to be a bit ahead of the curve, but we started at that point.
Already that summer 2021, climate impact started to hit the electricity supply in Europe. ERCOs were hiking the electricity price, pushing demand. It put the energy sector upside down, because usually the shortages would appear in the winter, you know, when a lot of heating is during the heating season, when a lot of electricity is being used. But now suddenly the shortages were showing up in summer. Interestingly, we thought.
We were still very much trying to get the first prosumers connected that summer. The PV plant at our own roof in Belgrade was the test case with which we were driving the local distribution network operators nuts. At that time, there were 0 prosumers connected to the grid, and it's not that there is no sun in Belgrade.
Burning low-grade lignite, braunkohle, had been the main source of electricity, but slowly public opinion and, of course, a changing reality in our world made this more and more perverse. September 2021 saw the ecologic uprise. By the end of the year, we finally got that first prosumer, actually that small PV plant on our own roof, connected. It was a small breakthrough, but it also made us look forward to the next adventure, a cooperatively owned solar farm. Well, that would be awesome if we could pull it off. Awesome.
But back to the summer of 2021. As all of you have been well aware of, a lot of our aspirations in those days got stuck because the powers of the economy were not on our side. We saw how financialization, shareholder value, debt-driven money creation, and more were plundering our future. So we became part of a movement that aimed to reclaim that, even if on a modest scale.
We had been members of the Cooperative for Ethical Finance, ZEF, since its start, and while it had been a great member-owned, democratic, inspirational financial cooperative, it had been denied the possibility to become a proper member-owned bank. We leave the speculation on why, the dark forces, to your own imagination.
But then in 2021, as a cooperative, we made a bold decision. It was the 13th of September, a Monday, not a Friday, mind you. The members of ZEF voted that night to become partners in what was to become the first ethical, fair European bank. Many of us thought it was a bit of a bold move from no bank at all to a European bank, but the escape forward was likely the only chance.
That same year, with a number of starting housing co-ops, we had done something similar, but on a smaller scale. That network of housing co-ops was called MOBA. And we had come together to pioneer novel community-led housing at what was at that time called the periphery of Europe. Well, today it's actually still the periphery, but that's for another talk.
In any case, as pioneering cooperatives, we understood that for our plans we would need substantial financial investment, serious capital, but for people struggling with housing affordability. Still, no bank was very keen on lending these naive startups the necessary capital, so we came up with a cunning plan to make our own investment pot. In 2021, with a bit of a help from peer co-ops in Switzerland, we managed to get the MOBA Housing Investment Fund starting. Super small, but it was important to mark the start.
To our surprise, we also found a number of impact investors, or angel investors as they're also called, from the US, which were interested in this. We, a bunch of hacks mainly originating from the housing struggle, suddenly had to learn how to talk to these guys. But learning we did.
At the same time, we were pushing community-led housing in our two habitats, Belgrade and Rotterdam.
Let's start with Belgrade. We've been pushing a novel cooperative community-led housing approach called Smarter Building for a while and had been looking for a way to give it a start. A bit to our surprise, we got contacted by two communities that were looking for something around community-led housing and were wondering if we could get them help them to get going.
The first group centered around seniors who sought to resolve number one, financial insecurity, number two, the need for care in their daily housing environment, and three, their increasing isolation and loneliness. A bit perplexing, but this particular target group, we went on a 5-day workshop with them to come up with the outlines of an approach. Only later we realized we became experts in intergenerational housing and that this could be a place for our older age.
The second group was younger in general, and with its relevance stretching out to the community they were located in. They sought to make a more integrative living and working environment. That year we spent much time with both communities to help them strengthen their plans to become self-made investment experts, finance hunters, crowdfunders, all that what we are not taught to become, but we understood that we had to do that in real life.
The first test came that fall when we launched the crowdfunding campaign for one of the pilots. We were looking for the secure part of the down payment for a local, for the location for one of the projects. Look at the site here. It was a dream, but unfortunately buying out didn't work out.
That fall, our own house in Rotterdam became the focus of a community takeover. The municipality, the owner of the houses, wanted to sell half of the street, and we, as a community living there, understood that our only chance of survival was to make a bid to buy it. It's the same story. We had to become instant real estate experts with all of our neighbors. Negotiations with the municipality were tense, almost hostile. By the 31st of December, we made our bid. If we would win, we would have to buy the houses, evict the street, demolish and rebuild it. If we would lose, we would have to evict the street and test our luck somewhere else. Both in Belgrade as well in Rotterdam, the stakes were high and the survival rate low.
Now you may wonder how this paid out. In short, in all three cases, it took us 3 years, till the end of 2024. To get them secured. In Rotterdam, we managed to save our street and found ourselves suddenly in the 42.5 square meters backpack apartment we could still afford under the new conditions. In Belgrade, one of the pilots managed to prove their case. And that was euphoria to some degree.
This now brings us to 2025. Adam Greenfield had already warned us in his 2017 book, Radical Technologies, that the build for the 20th century has come due with vengeance. The entire economy seems geared to repairing the damage.
Well, 2025 brought that vengeance in all its glory. The barely 4-year-old European Green Deal had only proceeded painfully slowly and looked like it was merely inching forward, grinding in its tracks. Major economies in Europe were slow in their transition away from fossil fuels, like Poland, which had relied for more than 70% of its energy on coal. Others were reluctant to saying farewell to their sources of wealth, like Norway, with its massive oil and gas reserves. The sluggish response to the climate urgency now had made the demand for renewables soar in an already tight market.
That summer, the heat wave caused electricity blackouts throughout the periphery of Europe. The demand for cooling could simply no longer be compensated by non-existing renewables, and as a result, power outages started to terrify several regions.
It proved a breakthrough for our energy co-ops. We now had come to understanding that we needed to diminish our reliance on those centralized infrastructures and get into a much more robust decentralized energy net. That fall, plans for this solar farm at the Belgrade airport started to get shape.
It's a 1 megawatt installation. It's a hell of a lot of power, but it's going to be operational by the end of the year.
This is what we had in mind back in 2021. We were about to blow the lid of this with our new members.
Financing proved tricky. The demand for solar had driven the interest rates on investment capital up. And for a cooperative as ours, the risk of putting members into energy poverty was a real one.
In the end, the resolve came through that ethical European bank. It had now been registered in Vilnius, in Lithuania, as that was, and it had a very welcoming innovation for fintech, as that was called at that time. Anyway, the co-op managed to convince the bank to take a substantial stake in the solar farm, and with the remainder capitalized through crowdfunding, we got going.
Not long after, also RESCOOP, it's the Association of All Energy Cooperatives in Europe, decided to partner with the bank for its operations. It was clear that the bank, under the control of its members, proved a much better condition to get proper access to finance.
That year also was the transfer of the ownership over the MOBA Housing Development Fund to this new ethical bank. When the fund size grew beyond 5 million euro, it was no longer viable to operate it without a proper banking license. That would be a liability both to MOBA itself, but also to investors, lenders, and the projects that were seeking loans. So the decision was made to let it go, and to be honest, it came as a relief of sorts. We'd been glad to have been involved in setting it up, but now it somehow had grown out of hand.
This now leads us to a surprise event that took place not long afterwards. Back in 2021, someone had demanded that the plan should be made for an alternative anti-squat agency in the Netherlands. That summer, an international workshop was held under the banner "Let's Be Real." So it was based on the mission of City in the Making, an alternative housing provider in Rotterdam. And in this workshop, a business plan was made for that organization to become an alternative anti-squat agency.
2028, still with no pension, City in the Making co-initiative PIT at 73 decided to put the money where the mouth is. or in other words, to activate an alternative anti-squat agency. Still without a driving license, he gets a self-navigating car. He manages to automate all the contracts and play the guitar the entire day. It made us think where we wanted to see ourselves.
Now arriving to 2029, it's also good to tell you that we are redirecting our focus a little bit. Belgrade has seen its share of novel co-ops taking ground, and for us, time has come to leave that to a new generation of protagonists. After years since the co-op provide a bit more of a safe ground for our own lives, we are now about to take up some of our more cultural, maybe more artistic work. It's a bit awkward to reinvent ourselves at our age, but it also brings a fresh perspective.
I have to say we forgot our glasses in 2029 to read this text. As Adam Greenfield put it in 2017, for those who are lucky enough to find a companionable fit, it is a life of fellowship, mutual aid, and above all purpose, unmarked by any trace of boredom or ennui. Maybe that is as good as it gets.
Thanks.
Thanks.